Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my December 2019 book haul. This is usually the time of week when I film and post my Friday Reads video, but I quickly realized this week that I really wouldn't have much more to talk about today. And as this is the final Friday of 2019, I'm pretty sure my end-of-year tally will sit at 94 read books, which is exactly the same as my tally from 2018. It's my first year in a few years where I haven't exceeded my tally, but I'm okay with that. I remember when I started the year, I kind of hoped and assumed that I would read less. I didn't want to put as much pressure on myself. I especially would like to be able to read longer books without getting freaked out about, fitting in as many as possible. I don't necessarily want to set a goal for myself about a specific amount of books I want to read, although month by month I think I really would like to get between 6 and 8 books per month. I'm not really going to penalize myself though if I don't make that. We'll see how it goes in 2020, but anyway, that's not what this video is about. This video is about crowing over books that I've acquired but haven't read yet, thus feeding into the angst cycle. The first book I have to talk about is the final book I bought for myself this year, which I also got signed, and then I have 8 gifts. This is the book that I got signed at the Tacoma Park Book Festival a few weeks ago. It is a very local book fair taking place in a American-style burger restaurant, a local chain. Anyway, this book is called White Elephant by Julie Langsdorff, and of course she's a local author as well. And I was looking at all of the books that were going to be featured at this small book fest and was debating what I would want to, buy. I pretty much knew I'd buy something. I want to support, writers. Anyway. I mean, on the surface, I wanted to go for a small press because I am hoping to publish with a small press myself. I wrote a novella, so that's my option. And also just to support people that don't get to the top big 5, but this book was just so appealing to me. This is a big 5 book. It's about community drama kind of based off of local neighborhoods around here, and it's been compared to Meg Wolitzer. So Meg Wolitzer is one of my favorite writers, so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go for this. So I approached the author and I say, I hear you had some comp to Meg Wolitzer and she's one of my favorite authors. And she said, actually, Meg Wolitzer blurbed the book. And I'm like, oh, what? Okay, I definitely made the right choice here. She writes, Julie Langsdorff mines wit from the ways that people manage or don't to live in close proximity. Her smart, enjoyable suburban comedy is observant and knowing about social selves and hidden selves and the ways in which they are sometimes made to overlap. These next 2 books are from my mother. I have a long TBR. I pick up on a lot of books that interest me, oftentimes from the booktube community and elsewhere because, like a lot of us, I follow a lot of industry news. But my mother sees much more fit sometimes to surprise me and I guess to challenge my reading norms a little bit. Anyway, she got both of these books at the Strand in New York, and I think she kind of went off the beaten path of new releases, because I probably would have known about all of them, and I haven't heard of either of these books, so, and I'm excited about that. I mean, at the very least, now I can get to my small publishers, I guess. Starting with this one. This is called The Sound of One Hand Clapping by Richard Flanagan. And actually, I believe this is an Australian book published by Picador Pan Macmillan, Australia. The back says, in the winter of 1954, in a construction camp that festered like a bad wound in the remote Tasmanian highlands, when Sonia Boulot was 3 years old and her father was drinking too much, Sonia's mother walked into a blizzard to never return. Some 35 years later, when Sonia visits Tasmania and her drunkard father, the shadows of the past begin to intrude ever more forcefully into the present, changing forever his living death and her ordered life. The sound of one hand clapping is about the underbelly of Australia, the barbarism of Europe, and the destiny of those in the country beyond hope who seek to redeem themselves through love. So I gotta say, I think my mother knows me because if you watch any of my videos, all of these words about family drama and redemption at the end, these are kind of my thing. This next one is Bashara by Herb Fried. Bashara means beloved in Hebrew. And it's by Bell Rock Press, so a press I'd never heard of in Los Angeles, so that makes me excited. I'll link it below. And in the back it says, "It was a chance meeting at a film industry event. From the moment Marion hears Dan's voice, she knows, and so does he. It's Bashara. But when did the course of true love ever run smooth? Dan and Marion are soon partners in business as well as life, traveling the world to create movies. He directs, she writes, and life becomes an amazing adventure until Cancun. There, among the ruins of the Mayan civilization, Marion has an eerie premonition that could change everything. Herb Fried immerses us in the heady intoxication and thunderous love of what it really means to be Bashara." So yeah, you know, I was talking in a couple of videos ago, I think my last Friday Reads, about romance, and maybe this fits the genre. It certainly seems to have some touchstones of it, so I'll give it a go. The rest of these books were on my TBR, and I, curated them and sent them off to family for gift ideas. Starting with this one. This is A Bend in the Stars by Rachel Barenbaum, which is Jewish fiction, although I think I first heard about it on Steve Donahue's channel probably about a year ago. And this is historical fiction that takes place in Russia starting around World War I, with two Jewish siblings, including a renowned physicist, or if not renowned, then a really good one. And they're in a bit of trouble because during World War I and the Russian Revolution, the Jewish community was in a bit of trouble. I think it might span into World War II, but either way, there's a lot of danger and drama. I think the siblings might get separated at one point, so there's going to be that sort of danger and intrigue. But then we're also going to have a major storyline about physics and Einstein and all of that. So it'll be an interesting camalgamation of a lot of things, I hope. So, yep. And it came out this year, so might be a contender for the BookTube Prize. Speaking of possible contenders for the BookTube Prize, this next one's also from 2019. All This Could Be Yours by Jamie Attenberg. I've read a couple of Attenberg's novels. I got the Middlestein signed, and I didn't absolutely love it, but I liked it enough as a family drama story. And this one particularly intrigued me. It's about family drama, family secrets, I think a bad patriarch, a bad dude patriarch, and all the people in his wake. Apparently something is working with me with Attenberg, so I'm hoping this one will be good. This next one, also a 2019 release, I believe I first heard about through Sean the Book Maniac, which I guess makes sense because it is a Canadian novel. This is Women Talking by Miriam Tays. It is about a very secluded Mennonite community, and during the course of general life, the women are constantly waking up, being sore and disoriented, and it becomes apparent that they've been assaulted, and then it becomes more apparent that the men of their community are doing this to them, and then it also is apparent that the community is not going to do anything to really stop or punish the men. So the women, who generally I think are, seen as subservient to the men, decide to get together on their own and decide what to do. And by all accounts, it's supposed to be very powerful. I was kind of hoping it would win the Reading Women Award this year for fiction to give me the excuse to read it. But now I have a physical copy, so that should also give me an excuse to read it. Huzzah! Next, I have Invisible as Air by Zoe Fishman. I believe it was published recently as well. This is about substance abuse and grief and, I guess, post-trauma in the Jewish community. I'm hoping maybe it is a well-defined progressive Jewish community, because usually what we get is either people on the ultra-Orthodox spectrum or people who are nominally Jewish, like the Larry David sort of Jews. So it would be nice to get something more in the middle, but I do believe the focus will be more on these dramatic issues. Speaking of Meg Wolitzer and all of my feels about the interestings, I have The Lost Girls of Camp Forevermore by Kim Fu, which I believe is a similar execution, or at least it's about a group of friends at camp, and I believe it then goes forward into their adulthood. Although it might also have more to do with an experience, a haunting experience together they have at camp, like when they're lost. I love these sort of stories where you can delve into the character development of what from your past shapes your future, especially when it's about a group of friends and how they all interact with one another. And finally, on my Amos Oz kick, I have In the Land of Israel, and this is nonfiction again. I really do think I might want to focus more on his nonfiction than his fiction, although I might also eventually want to get through the rest of his novels and so forth too. But anyway, this is from the 80s, and it's about his own travels in the West Bank. It says, notebook in hand, Amos Oz traveled throughout Israel and the West Bank in the early 1980s to talk with workers, soldiers, religious zealots, aging pioneers, new immigrants, desperate Arabs, and visionaries, asking them questions. What he heard is set down here in those distinctive voices alongside Oz's observations and reflections. A classic insider's view of a land whose complex past and troubled present make for an uncertain future, which does sound, it's a pretty shaky ground, but in terms of picking a prophet to follow, I really think I've kind of gone with Amos Oz. I just love his perspective. I just find it so true, and so I'm really looking forward to what he has to say. My mother already told me she wants to snatch this away from me, so I guess I should get to it soon, maybe. Because man, oh man, do I have a lot of books. I have a lot of books on my shelves from years past. I go to the library a fair bit as well, and then I have all of the books that I hauled this year. And since it's the end of the year, I actually did a little tally right here of how many books I hauled, and I broke them up into sections. The first one is books that I got from the library, which is not a definitive list. It was just because well, my intent for, hauling books on this channel from the library was to encourage myself not to buy as many books, but most months it turned out I had more than enough books that I acquired somehow for keeps that I didn't have to show off library books. But I got out a lot more than this year from the library, but I showed off 12 on this channel. The next category I have is books I bought at full price, which usually is about me either wanting to support an author at a book festival, a local book festival or some sort, or that I want to get it signed by the author at an event. And that tally has gone up to 18 this year. My next category, appropriate for this month especially, is books that were gifted to me in 2019, and that number is 10. Next I have used and retail books from when I go to my library book sale, or when I have a book on my TBR that I can't find at the library, and so I go ahead and order it usually from a Barnes & Noble bookseller, and so that number came up to 17. And my final category is free books. The major category for getting free books for me is through the DC Library's banned book scavenger hunt every year. And I also went to a little free book library this year during Nano, so that was a lot of the books overall, and I acquired 8 free books. So, if I tally up all of the books I acquired in a permanent way, so disregarding the 12 library books, all of the other categories come up to 53 books. My general MO, which I'm trying to get myself to enforce more vigorously, is to think of a lot of these books as books that are only my temporary possessions, that after I read them, I'll go ahead and get rid of them. There are some books I would want to keep, particularly books that I've gotten signed by authors. That's a collection I do want to curate, and some others as well. But most of the books I really am hoping that I'll ultimately unhaul, which makes things a little awkward in the gift-giving category. I feel like maybe I should stop asking for books. I always feel a little iffy about it because I just have so many surrounding me all the time. And you know, nobody wants you to think of buying you a book that you'll ultimately get rid of. But it's my way of sort of justifying a large collection that I hope doesn't grow too large, or else I'll have to buy 10 more bookshelves. So we'll see how things go in 2020. I am hesitant, I suppose, to make huge goals for myself. I guess because I just don't want to take any of this too seriously. I want my reading life to be fun. This is, after all, something I'm doing only for my own enjoyment, after all. But in a general sense, I do think I might try to hold myself back from buying, especially full-price books. Sometimes I go to any new event and I'm like, any new literary event, and I'm like, oh, I should buy a book here, I should be supporting this, and maybe I don't have to do that all the time. I could also attempt scratching that itch by buying books for other people at that time. Like that's what I did at the independent bookstore day in April last year. I bought a Mother's Day book for my mom. And I may also try to cut back on asking for bookish gifts. Surely something else will catch my fancy. A lot of the other members of my family got really cool looking electrical gadgets that maybe I'd like to have as well. So that about covers it for me. I'm sure this was longer than I hoped, and I gotta get moving on into Friday and the weekend. I think this is finally going to be the weekend where my dad, my sister, and my niece come to DC where I am, and we're gonna go to the Natural History Museum to see the new dinosaur wing, because my niece is a big fan of dinosaurs, so we've been hoping to do this for a while, so I'm really excited about that. I hope you all have great fun ways to end the new year. I will be back before the new year to do some final end of year videos, so stay tuned. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.